Mark Mitchell, how are the figures looking now? I saw that Rasmussen, which is I think my favorite polling company in terms of getting at the actual underlying situation in the States. You published a poll, I think, this morning saying that 43% of Americans strongly disapprove of Joe Biden. How is he? How is his heir and successor? Assuming that we're going to have an honest election in November, though there's every doubt that it will be, knowing the Democrats' propensity to cheat. We'll talk about that a little later. How is this? How can Kamala Harris possibly present herself for election on November the 5th when you have the absolute disintegration of the southern border, which was supposed to be her primary responsibility?
Well, I don't think they're going to be able to memory hold this at all. If you go to Google Trends, like 20 times more people are searching for the term border czar right now than they ever have, right? There's psyops that work and there's psyops that don't. And I don't think this Kamala Harris psyop is going to work. Like, they're pretty effective with abortion. Only 12% of voters want abortion after 6 months, but somehow the country is painted as a pro-choice country, and it's just not. Immigration is going to be a really tough one to bury too, because this country does not like illegal immigration, and we should know, because we're basically the experts on immigration. We're sponsored by Numbers USA to go into the field every month, and we ask a set of questions about immigration over and over again, and we produce an index. And I'll tell you, by like a 60% to 15 or less margin, so 4-1 to 5-1, Americans say the government is doing too little versus too much to prevent illegal immigration at the border. And what's fascinating is that index, which tracks how soft people are on immigration, was actually showing that people wanted softer stance on immigration during the Trump administration. But the second that Biden got elected, the index plunged from like 125 down to the 80s, where it is staying today. So there was something subconscious about Joe Biden's presidency that people knew even before he started implementing his policies, that this administration is way too soft on the border. Now, I'll get into the race numbers in a second, but I just want to take a high-level look at what's going on here. 4 years ago, Trump was down, call it 8 to 10 points, depending on what poll you're looking at. Today, in our polling, he's up like almost that amount. So he's turned it around 15 points in a 4-year period. And it's interesting to ask why, but if you look at why he's winning so much right now, it's because more Democrats would cross over to vote Trump than Republicans would cross over to vote Biden or Harris. And Trump is winning among independents. Now, how are the Democrats going to win it? There's, in my opinion, let's just assume that all of the Democrats vote Biden or Harris the same amount that Republicans vote Trump. Then they have to win the independents. Independents hate what's going on in the border. And believe it or not, border is their number 2 issue behind the economy. So how is she the woman? What's their strategy? Like, we can even get into her competency. People don't think she's a good vice president at all. Why is putting her at the top of the ticket their best strategy? I kind of think that all they have left at this point is cheating.
Exactly so. The Democrats aren't going to win this next election. If they get their candidate inaugurated on January the 20th, it will be thanks to cheating rather than a straight-up election. Mark, can you just look? We've got about two minutes coming up to the next break. Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia. These are the conventional 6 states around which the Electoral College is going to revolve, right? How I've seen some of the national polls putting Trump a few points ahead versus Harris. The polls that have just sort of been done, I think, in the last few days. In some senses, these national polls aren't really going to tell us very much about what's going to happen on November the 5th in terms of the Electoral College. What's happening there in these 6 swing states?
Yeah, I have to be very careful about saying when these polls came out. So Trump was up 5 to 10 points all year. He actually got down to only +3 after the debate because Democrats rallied around Biden. The following week, we had Trump up to +8. So we did a mega swing state poll, which is the one that showed that +3 margin. So with Trump only up 3, probably the lowest result we've had. We had Arizona, Trump +9, Pennsylvania, Trump +4, Georgia, Trump +5, Wisconsin, Trump +3, Nevada, Trump +8. And Michigan, Trump +1. Those are all the multi-way matchup numbers. So, you can argue about if you like your two-way or your multi-way, but we show him winning to, roughly tied to up majorly in every single swing state. And that was in a poll that was less favorable to him before the assassination attempt, before the majorly positive RNC. I just don't like it's going to come down to the 3 a.m. pipe bursts or mail-in ballots, and we can get into that after the break. But we've got some crazy polling that implies that there's a level of cheating in this country bigger than anybody expected.
Mark,
could I ask a question, please?
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
like to ask a question about what you're seeing in New Mexico, what you're seeing in Minnesota, or maybe Colorado, if the map has expanded for the Trump campaign.
I haven't had a chance to poll those states yet. I think we have an opportunity potentially to go into New York soon. We're going to do another set of swing state polls. I might incorporate more. But I think the takeaway is that if you look at your New York Times Siennas, if you look at your Bloombergs or Harvard Harris, people call us a right-wing pollster. We were actually like about a point off in the national popular vote in 2020 if you averaged all of our September and October polling together. Those pollsters are pretty close to us at a national level, and I think you'll find that on an individual swing state basis that we're holding up too. So I think if you look at a reputable pollster that's in the same ballpark as us, you can trust the other polling that they're doing.
Mark Mitchell, how long can we expect from Rasmussen reports to come out with a poll looking specifically at these swing states on a Trump, Vance versus Kamala and whoever her VP will be matchup?
Yeah, I think we need to give it time for everything to solidify. I would say, give it 2 or 3 weeks. This swing state poll we just did, believe it or not, is only like 10 or 11 days old, but a lot's happened since then. I think the biggest finding in this poll is the cheating result. As you know, we've been following cheating very, very intently. We think it's incredibly important to be an accurate pollster. Everybody else seems to duck this issue. We've been asking about it for 3 years now. We went from an under 50% of the population saying they were concerned about cheating in 2020 to now our biggest number, 66% of people are now at least somewhat concerned that cheating will affect the outcome of the 2024 election. Of course, we've also tested things like audits and IDs and paper ballots. Everybody overwhelmingly supports that stuff. But what we've done, we did one back in December. This is incredible. We asked people multiple questions about what they did with mail-in ballots. Did you fill it in on behalf of somebody else? Did you do one?
Mark,
yeah.
Mark, excuse me. You're that 66%, right, of respondents concerned about cheating in the 2024 election. Can you break that down by party affiliation?
Yeah, I don't have the 66 one in front of me. I have the 62 one. And how concerned are you? Okay. It was 78% of Republicans, a majority, 60% of independents, and even now, 50% of Democrats. So Democrats were always the holdout. The number for them was always, mid-30s to mid-40s. And now that Trump's winning, I think their number's starting to creep up. But yeah, I mean, it's a bipartisan concern, and that's because people have seen a lot of hijinks, in my opinion, a lot of things that have been swept under the rug with the big lie narrative. But when you get, check this number out, from this swing state poll, when you get 18% of every voter in the country saying that in the 2020 elections, did you personally receive more than one official ballot in the mail or receive a ballot for someone who does not live at your address? 18% of the electorate says yes. 30% of 18 to 39-year-olds in this country, 29% of Hispanic voters, and in the battleground states, that 18% number is actually 20%. So not only that, in this one where we asked people about mail-in ballots, at least 28% of people who voted with mail-in ballots said they committed themselves out of their own mouth at least one form of ballot fraud. And then the biggest, most unique takeaway I've never seen come out of any pollster ever. Most pollsters poll registered voters. They just like download a list of people out of the voter file. We poll likely voters. And for the first time, we included a question: are you a U.S. citizen? Now, why would a pollster ever have to ask that? Well, let me tell you, the results were pretty astounding. In a 2,500 likely voter poll of the nation, 222 people said either no or not sure to that question of you are a U.S. citizen. This is a likely voter poll. These people say they vote in federal elections. 90% of these people, actually 95% of these people, said they voted in 2020. That number is 9%. Now,
okay. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna have to do a Steve Bannon here. Stop. Right. This is what I want, folks. This is what I want the War Room posse to do. Right. With your was that pencil he has that he says it so many times that double whatever it is. Get your pencils out and make a note of this when you're down at the bowling club, when you're down at the supermarket, right? When you're down at the bar having a coffee or a pint, right? Get this piece of paper out and share it with people. Let people know. Mark, what were those figures again? Tell me again about the likelihood of voters from non-US citizens, and again fear of election fraud in 2024. What are those headline figures once again?
Got to be super careful about what I'm implying. In a 2,466 U.S. likely voter poll of voters across the country, people who said they vote in elections, 9% of them said either no or not sure to the question of whether you're a U.S. citizen. Now, I have not been asking this question. We don't have a lot of history on this. I can confirm that it wasn't people fat fingering their phone numbers. Like, I can confirm that it wasn't people who couldn't read because they answered other questions appropriately. This is a stunning finding that people need to not ignore. Other pollsters need to try and replicate this. We're going to try and get more data. Maybe we just got one crazy poll, but guess what? Like in a 2,500 likely voter poll, margin of error is like slightly less than 2%, right? So, this subsample's margin of error is like 6 or 7%, is not 9%. Like 222 of these people said they were not citizens. Now, what's interesting is they vote both Trump and Biden in 2020. And this is the same signal that we've seen in the mail-in ballot fraud questions, which is it isn't a systematic signal of one party cheating we're seeing. It's just a big free-for-all. But that's exactly what you'd want if you were going to manipulate the levers of our electoral systems. Anything can go in our elections right now. 30% of people that did mail-in ballots in 2020 say they committed fraud. Like 20% of voters, millions and millions of ballots out there that are just superfluous, floating around for anybody to manipulate.
This should be on the front page of every national newspaper in the United States. Mark, before you go and you give your socials, it's not going to be. Before you go and quickly give your socials, what was that headline figure again about fear of election fraud in November 2024? That figure once again. And get out, folks, it's your number 2 pencil. That's what you need to get out and make a note of this.
Yeah. This is the most recent result, not the biggest one, but 62% of U.S. likely voters are at least somewhat concerned that cheating will affect the outcome of the 2024 election. 37% very concerned, only 15% not at all concerned. And that, to me, is a damning revelation about people's confidence in our electoral systems.
Mark, that's absolutely astonishing. I'm going to look at that report. I'm going to break it down in my private time, which leads me on to where can people go if they want to read this and forward it, go on the social media and forward it to their own contacts and friends. People need to see these things.
Yeah, this was a sponsored poll, so the crosstabs are free for everybody. Go to RasmussenReports.com, search for the term Heartland. It was just out like this week and last week. The stories are coming out. Go to our YouTube. We break all this stuff down. And Twitter at Rasmussen_poll.
Mark Mitchell, Rasmussen Reports. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Those figures are absolutely terrifying, and it underlines what we've been saying here on the War Room. They stole 2020, nothing has been done, and there's every possibility they're going to steal and cheat on the 5th of November 2024. Mark Mitchell, thanks very much.